Latency is the bane of any musician trying to record themselves. It's the delay between when you start singing in the microphone and when the computer starts recording it. Too much latency and your tempo is going to feel more off than your stepdad drunkenly trying to sing Sweet Caroline at karaoke. But in this video, I'm going to show you a way to fix it in Logic Pro. To start, you'll first want to examine your project's audio settings. Open up a project of Logic Pro, then go up to Logic Pro, Settings, and Audio. That will open up this menu here and let you see what your current latency is. You can change this I/O buffer size right here to affect the resulting latency. Notice that as I go lower, the resulting latency goes down. The higher, the longer it takes. Now, you might be thinking that you'll want this latency to be as low as possible then, right? Yes, you absolutely can make this I/O buffer size really small if you have a good computer. But if you have a ton of tracks or are using a lot of processing, you'll quickly find that your computer will start running into over-processing issues if this I/O buffer size is too small. I've been there so many times. The less this number is, the quicker the latency will be, but it will also require a lot more computing power from your computer. But there's actually a way in Logic Pro we can get this latency number to 0 without touching the I/O buffer size at all, even on 1024. This will give our computer all of the processing power it needs, and let me show you how to do it. The solution, my friends, is simple and is something I wish I knew way earlier before I began recording. Logic has a feature called Low Latency Mode. This will automatically detect what your computer's latency is in milliseconds and then automatically adjust your recordings to compensate for that delay. To turn it on, you can either go up to the Record tab up here and click Low Latency Monitoring Mode. When it's checked, it's on. But because I use it so often, I prefer to add it to my toolbar up here. To do that, you can click on this caret here, go to Customize Control Bar and Display, and then select Low Latency Monitoring Mode from right here. If you want to save this forever so you don't ever have to do this again, click Save as Default, and this will come up on every single project you open up. Once that's selected, you'll see a stopwatch looking timer thing that sits at the top of the toolbar, and when it's on, it turns orange. With Low Latency Mode on, Logic automatically will move your track the amount of milliseconds you have of latency time. In this case, after recording, Logic will move our tracks back 17.1 milliseconds, so it's as if we recorded them in real time. This is a really helpful feature, and it works completely behind the scenes, so you just turn it on and don't think about it. Low Latency Mode works amazingly well for recording, especially with a ton of plugins on your track, but it will also disable some key features in Logic Pro that you'll want to have while you mix. One reason Low Latency Mode works so well is because it disables process-intensive plugins while it's on. This will minimize the latency even more, which is exactly what you want. But you won't be able to hear these plugins while you're mixing. You can see some of these disabled plugins on the tracks because they turn an orangish gray like this. If you keep Low Latency Mode on during the mixing phase of your track, you'll find that the volume and the effects don't always match up when it's off. These plugins that it bypasses change the end sound. For that reason, only keep it on while you're recording. And when you begin mixing, turn it off so that you'll hear everything the way it's supposed to sound and be processed. Occasionally, you'll run into a plugin that you'll want to hear as you record, but Low Latency Mode deems it too big or causes too much latency for it to turn on. In this case, I want to hear the auto-tune and the reverb on my voice I record, but both the auto-tune and the bus reverb are grayed out. We can fix this by adjusting the amount of latency that will gray out these plugins manually, which can give us access to plugins we might not normally get in Low Latency Mode. To do so, we'll go back up to the Settings, Audio, and this time we'll click on the General tab right here. Now we can change the limit of the Low Latency Monitoring Mode and how much it will actually allow to come through. Let's go up to 20 milliseconds and see if that worked. Unfortunately, in this case, it didn't. But there are still some workarounds that you can use if you want to hear those desired effects. Instead of using Auto-Tune Pro, I'm going to go in and use a plugin called Waves Tune Real Time. This is designed to minimize the latency that I hear on my vocals as I'm recording. But because I have this I selected for input monitoring mode, when I sing into the microphone, you'll start to hear my voice come back. And this time, you can see it's not oranged out with Low Latency Mode on. That means it'll still be able to move the audio, but it will still have the effect when I actually sing. Similarly, we can do the same thing with the reverb. Low Latency Mode normally turns off bust reverbs like I have right here. But if we add a process-friendly plugin like Space Designer onto the end here, you can start to hear my voice already come through. Then after you're done recording, you can always change these plugins out. These aren't printed onto the audio by any means. That trick that I showed you works with some plugins, but like you saw, it doesn't work with every plugin. So you have to be a little bit creative if you want to hear yourself as you're singing. Mess around with some of these settings and see what works for you as you're recording. And that's really all you need to know to start recording without any latency at all in Logic Pro. I'm not kidding when I tell you that the first 2 years I spent producing, I spent hours manually adjusting the recordings by zooming in and then just dragging them to what I thought was the beat. And all I had to do was turn on low latency mode. Remember to only use this low latency mode for the recording stage and not for the mixing stage. And if you follow this advice, you're gonna save yourselves years of headaches on your recordings. It's gonna make your life so much easier. Like and subscribe for more tips like this. And if you wanna learn more about how to record pro vocals from your home studio, go check out this video I made on how to do just that down below.